Hello and welcome to Where the Living Room Used to Be, a podcast about Rhode Island's music scene. Hey everyone, it's James. This bonus mini episode has Francis Anderson passing along an intense rhythm practice technique, as well as how they walk through counterproductive advice, their songwriting practice, and how they've reached over 850 songs in their portfolio. Plus, Francis shares an impressive take connecting music from around the world. At the end of the episode, I've included a performance from Franny Keeps live at Doomed Records in Cranston, Rhode Island. The song is Had I Known, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, Francis, I wanted to ask you, can you share a piece of music advice that has been given to you from someone else, such as a mentor, another musician friend, bandmate, fellow songwriter, recording engineer, anyone that's kind of been in your circle that stuck with you and you'd like to now share with people that are listening?
Sure. I'll say the piece of advice that sticks with me the most is when I was about 19 years old, my dad told me to quit music, and I didn't listen.
Yeah.
So it's a great example of advice you shouldn't listen to. Sometimes people are going to tell you what you should do, and you got to follow your heart instead.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I say, moving around every year or two, I never got involved enough in a community to have like a mentor or close friend or someone to give me advice. I did get some good advice from a fellow musician. Was like, you've written all of these songs, you should get them out even if they're really shitty. And I struggled with that for a long time because I have such lofty ambitions for my songs. I hear, like you'll hear on the record, I'll write a song on guitar, but I'm picturing vibraphone and a drum kit and piano and all this stuff, and I'm like, how could I put out a version of this that's not even a tenth of what I dream of for it? But it really is good advice that at a certain point you have to just get stuff out even if it's in an unfinished state, and I know a lot of people struggle with that, so that's good advice. And I think another great piece of advice, which I got from a musician that I don't know personally, is I watched a lecture with Victor Wooten, who is a world-class bassist. Some people would say he's the best bassist in the world. And Victor Wooten was describing a practice that they have, extreme rhythm practice, where some musicians will practice without a metronome. Other musicians will practice with a metronome, and that's kind of the next step towards really polishing yourself. And Victor Wooten has this practice where they say you need to go further. Practice with a metronome, and then when you're comfortable, cut the metronome down in half, so you're getting half as many beats. So you have to count twice as hard in your head. Then cut it down in half again, and in half again, and in half again. And it's like, eventually, I have a metronome which is playing a beat like every minute and 14 seconds. And I play my bass parts to see, can I count, have I physically internalized the rhythm accurately enough that I'm still on tempo a minute later? And because he's the best bassist in the world, he is, so he demonstrates this on YouTube, and he's playing like crazy, like Jaco Pastorius bass runs, and then finally the metronome clicks. It's like, oh, like I'm slightly behind. I can barely hear the difference, but he's slightly rushing or dragging, and then he makes adjustments. And it's great advice for me because I lack a lot of technical virtuosity on instruments, and so that kind of really, really focused practice helps me make up for lost time in trying to get better at instruments. And then I think that it can be applied elsewhere. If you want to be a good singer, you can't spend all your time singing your favorite songs. You're going to have to do some other weird exercise to stretch the bounds of what that instrument can do. So I think it's just good adaptable advice.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I guess what just kind of comes to mind. So I play drums, and there's definitely periods as I was learning, and I'm self-taught. It was kind of cool hearing you because I could just identify with it. My parents are not musical in any capacity. Like, you don't want to see my dad dance. He has no rhythm at all. But learning how to play drums, and yeah, there were just periods where I would play like just with my right hand, just kind of going around and just doing it over and over again until it just other stuff would kind of click, and building up different pieces at different times.
Smart.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing, because it's, yeah, obviously you want to like jump into these things and be like, well, I want to do this crazy drum solo, but it's like, it's really important to just go dun 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 dun,
Yep.
and just have that be on time. And yeah, so that's cool to hear.
Yeah, we have that pop culture image of like a film like Karate Kid or something, where they're like, if you want to become a good fighter, you have to punch sand for 12 hours. And we're like, oh, how interesting, how inspiring and cool. And then we don't apply that to creative work, because we want creative work to be fun, especially if, you're like me, you have a day job, so you only have limited time each day to do creative stuff. You want it to be really fun, but sometimes you just have to do one specific repetitive exercise to really hone yourself.
Yeah, it's 10,000 hours, so
Mhm.
but similar to that, though, from your own experience of writing music and playing and these, recording sessions that you've done, is there something that you've learned personally from all of that you would now like to pass along?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I'll share. One is, I think songwriting is really overlooked and misunderstood. And I think everyone could improve their music and their enjoyment of it by getting a little deeper into it. Some people are already into songwriting,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of folks who learning songwriting, like for example, as a drummer, if if um, if a drummer starts listening to music for songwriting, they are likely to, I would assume, develop an even more intimate sense of why the drum parts were written for that song, for that part of
Mhm.
that song. When they're listening to Led Zeppelin, they'll get a sense of, oh, the reason why John Bonham changes the drum feel or wrote this drum part is because John Bonham can hear the song that Jimmy Page is playing, and
Mhm.
he's playing along with this imaginary song. So I think it's kind of this sort of an invisible skeleton that ties together a lot of music that gets overlooked. So I'm always evangelizing people to pay more attention to songwriting. But then another tip I would give people is to force yourself to listen to a lot of music, especially music you hate. I think
Mhm.
it's relatively rare for people to sit and make themselves listen to stuff that they can't stand. But it's been very enriching for me to make myself listen to music that I'm not a fan of, because it will help me isolate the one thing that I don't like about it, or find the one thing I do like about it, and
Mhm.
then draw weird inspiration from it. If you're going to write a bass part for a standard pop song, if all you listen to is standard pop songs, the boundaries of your inspiration are limited. But if you
Yeah.
forced yourself to listen to, math rock or something you don't like, opera, then you can pull from the ideas and the motifs of that genre and write a better part, play a more interesting part. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good tip for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I would recommend, if you want to play metal, you should listen to bluegrass, because it's
That's a
some
good
of
tip.
like the what a bluegrass guitarist can do in their style of picking is just pretty out there. But yeah, like, and I think that, to your point, like, yeah, if all you're listening to is just this crazy guitarist and being like, again, for me personally, it was like, well, I just want to skip all these steps. I just want to get to be John Bonham now.
Right.
It's like, well, actually, you're just like a kid that has never played. You played drums for an hour. Like,
Yeah.
but just to break those things down, and yeah, for me, it's taken some time, but just think a little bit more critically, or at least listen more critically to a lot of different things, and definitely explore some more music as well too, which, at least to me, doesn't seem like it tends to happen too much here in America. That there's just not a lot of um, different styles of music that isn't top 40 that is really even kind of presented to us. I mean, it's obviously
Right.
easier now with streaming services, but and just as a quick shout out, why I absolutely love Chance and PVD World Music, just because he's exposing a lot of amazing, talented people to at least a more and just a different way. He's just
Yeah.
like, I'm going to put this show on in downtown Providence. It's like literally, it's happening outside as people are walking by. You are going to listen to this music,
Yeah.
and it's phenomenal. But he's just presenting this in a way that hopefully people can take in and just become more aware of. So I hear you on that,
Yeah.
and I guess, one quick thing, again, as a drummer, I wish that drummers would get more songwriting credits. I mean, I know that I'm not like writing the lyrics, but there's a lot of times
Right.
over the, 5 years that I've been playing that there's a lot of thought that goes into that and playing to a song and song structures and things
Absolutely.
like that, honestly, I'm not sitting there with the lyricist and the guitarist and saying all of these things. I'm follow, it can follow a certain pattern, but um, there is that level of creativity that comes to it.
Mhm.
That yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say that I should get more credit.
Yeah.
Like
I agree. I think that drums can sometimes drums support the structure of a song. Oftentimes they transform or dictate the
Mhm.
the feeling of a song. You know, the bridge of a song can either just have the drums go straight through it. Something I notice a lot of lately is drum beats on pop music will remain completely unchanged or only changed in the most minute nuance
Yeah.
right through a bridge or right through a chorus. And I'm like, I can't feel the chorus very palpably because the drums have done nothing but change the hi-hat sample to be brighter.
Yeah.
And that's not enough for me to feel the contrast between the verse and the chorus. So when it's lacking, the songwriting can't shine or the songwriting is absent. That contrast between song sections is absent. So
Hmm.
I agree that the drums do a lot for giving a song its bones and shaping how the different passages of a song feel. And
Hmm.
every beloved drummer is that's essentially what separates them from the crowd is that they would play drums which gave the songs more contrast, more excitement, more interest. They either accentuated or they either accentuated the songwriting or they did some of the lifting in the songwriting
Hmm.
process.
Yeah. Yeah. But with that, in the full interview, you talked about 850 songs that you've
Mhm.
written. What is that process like for you, and how often are you writing them? Like, do you have set goals for that? Or, I think I brought it up in the past, but there's an amazing songwriter, Will Johnson, who is out of Austin. You may have heard of him. He plays in a band called Centromatic, or he did play in a band called Centromatic. Now he's the drummer with Jason Isbell. Um, an amazing guy, but he would set goals of like, I'm going to write a song a day, or he would
Mhm.
write, songs on guitar. He would write an album on bass, and then it would, transform. But, you know, that stuff comes up. Is that something that you're doing, or are you doing stuff like, I'm going to just write for as much, I have a block of an hour, 4 hours, 8 hours, and I'm
Right.
just going to write. And like, can you just talk about those 850 songs
Sure.
and,
Yeah,
what it's like?
it would be my pleasure. So I've been at it since I was 16, I think. And
Hmm.
my first song came to me in the shower. Um, you know, just a melody that then I had to
Hmm.
figure out the chords for later. And I still do a fair amount of songwriting in my head.
Well, cool.
But because I've been at it for a long time, I've been at it for, almost 20 years and have written so many, I've gone through different phases with it. But the short answer is that when I fell in love with songwriting and I got serious about it, I said to myself, I love doing this. I think I'm really good at it. I'm gonna I'm gonna do this, and I'm going to set a general goal for myself to write 4 songs a month. I just set a quota. I was like, I should write 4 songs a month.
Hmm.
Um, and I often would go above that. I mean, for several years, I was writing more like 8 songs a month. And but on average, I would hit that. Sometimes I'd dip a little below, but on average, I would hit that quota. And in addition to that, having a general output that I wanted to achieve, I had standards for myself. So I never wanted to write a song I wasn't proud of at the time that I wrote it. I definitely look back on old songs now and I'm like, I don't like that one anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've never written a song which at the time I thought, well, okay, that was tissue paper. I used it and I'm done with it. I'll never look at that one again. I was always excited about a song when I finished it. And when excitement was lacking, or if I was trying to get more excitement out of songwriting, I would set exercises for myself. I would say,
Okay.
okay, now I'm going to write one where, it's only one chord, or now I'm going to write one where, the chorus is 4 bars, but there's only 3 chords, so the chorus will repeat 3 times, and it will wheel through the chords. The melody will be happening on top of the chords at different times, so the chorus will feel like it's wheeling. And then, can I write a song that takes advantage of that wheeling carousel type of effect? Weird abstract stuff like that.
No, I dig that. That's awesome.
Or can I write a song with 2 bridges? Weird stuff like that. And I just kept doing it. Um, so that I kept writing stuff that excited me. Um, a couple times I've written like concept albums or have written to specific themes, but I really I don't struggle for, I don't, it's not hard to write songs for me. So as long as I make time to do it, it
Hmm.
feels great and I love doing it. And they come, they come usually pretty naturally.
Hmm.
Um, there's still a lot of work that goes into it, but I love doing that work. And when life has been busier, like it is now, I have a kid, brand new baby. When life gets busier, then it becomes a lot of, all right, I have an idea, I'll record it on a voice memo. Then when I get a chance, I'll figure it out on guitar. And then when I'm going for a run, I'll write the lyrics and just like
Hmm.
make sure to always, every space in my life that I can fit it, I'll do some bit of the songwriting. So now it's very fractured because
Yeah.
I don't have like a weekend with nothing to do anymore, like I used to.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to sit at the piano or the guitar for like 8 hours a day and just write songs because I couldn't get enough of it. Um, but yeah, my goal is to just keep doing it in fragments, no matter how busy my life is, and to try to have a certain quota, a certain number that I put out every month, and then to challenge myself to do weird new stuff and
Yeah.
do it in a way that feels satisfying.
Yeah. And how like fleshed out are they? Like are they um pretty fully realized? I mean, not to the level that you're like at a studio with session musicians,
Yeah.
but like are they at like a level where you have a lot of different layers to them, or is it like how much are you recording these and you have this like archive of all of these songs or
So I'm a little bit traditional, I guess, in my songwriting where it's all on paper and binders.
oh, okay.
They're like, I call them cookbooks. They're recipes for songs.
Oh, cool.
And they're very fleshed out. It ranges. Sometimes they're very simple ideas, and sometimes they're very bare bones, or sometimes it's guitar and vocals. There's nothing more to it.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
Maybe I would add drums or bass or piano later, but that's not part of the plan right now. It's just
Hmm.
kind of a singer-songwriter song. But a lot of them, a lot of them, like more than 75% of them are written, and I'm like, all right, this is the basic drum beat, or like
Hmm.
there's like rhythm notation in it. These are all the chords, these are all the melodies, these are all the lyrics, these are all the sections of the song. It's all mapped out, and it would have this kind of drum beat, and it would have usually I'll even have like a bass part in mind for it, a general bass part in mind, and I'll have instrumental ideas. So I'll write little notes and be like, this should have a toy piano, or this should have a string quartet here, or something like that.
Hmm.
So they are all. I'm basically writing Beatles fan fiction. I'm like, what if they kept going? Like, they can.
Hey.
What if they wrote this song and it had, like they could have an organ. It could be an organ, and then Ringo could play the tambourine
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's always like a plan for them, and sometimes the plan is very simple. Sometimes it's extremely fleshed out.
Hmm.
But I do a bunch of recording, and there are several hundred like crummy demos on the computer. But recording is not my forte, unfortunately. The only thing that I think I'm actually good at is songwriting. And so it's made it very slow to do the other parts of it because
Hmm.
demoing takes forever, and recording takes forever, and practicing a part. so that it's good enough to record. Takes forever.
Hmm.
But yeah, but I've got some recordings laying around.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And I'm always, interested in asking what inspires musicians, and it, can go beyond your musical inspirations, but like, yeah, what inspires you as a person?
Good question, and I have an answer for it, which does branch out past music, but I'll keep it focused on music, which is I find I think the primary source of inspiration in my life is diaspora, the diasporic experience,
Hmm.
which I think is one of the most quintessentially American experiences and one of the best things to search for and learn about and appreciate in music. We talked earlier in the interview about my love of video game music, and I just think it's amazing that you'll have, you know, Black Americans in the wild Western frontier innovating the piano with traditions from their lineage in America, and then that gets frozen in time and rediscovered by Japanese composers 100 years later who are trying to write music that is exciting, even though it can only use the most rudimentary chip technology. And so they look to
Hmm.
syncopation as a way to spice up a music that would otherwise sound boring. Bleeps on time on a grid sound like a metronome. So these
Yeah.
Japanese composers are like, let's use bluegrass and ragtime and jazz to syncopate this music so that it's more exciting to listen to. And then it
Hmm.
comes across the Pacific Ocean to America, where a teenager who is 3 generations removed from the the Irish exodus to America is listening to this Japanese composer's interpretation of a Black American pianist. I mean, it's amazing. It's one of the most
Hmm.
beautiful things about music that people from all over the world across history get connected and share these ideas, and it never stops thrilling me. I was re-listening to some Beatles tunes a couple weeks ago and was listening to the song um, Across the Universe. And Across the Universe ends with this string section, this cello section marching up the scale. And I realized I've heard that before. That's the bass line from Campus, which is a Vampire Weekend song, which was originally written as a classical music piece by Rostam. And I had another one of these universe imploding moments where I'm like, Rostam is Rostam's parents are Persian and they fled a war to come to America, and Rostam was learning classical music as written by Americans who were interpreting classical music that British people were trying to recreate as working class British people who wanted to make American black blues music. The Beatles wanted to make American black blues music, but then they wanted classical music elements, so they asked Phil Spector, who's an American, to make a European sounding classical music piece, which also sounds Indian, and then a Persian American is quoting that. I'm like, it's endless, it's bottomless. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the DNA of all of these people's experiences, it's everywhere, and it's beautiful to continue discovering it. And that's just in music, it's true in all these other facets of life. The food that we eat, the friends that we make, the clothing that we wear, the architecture around us, it's all borrowed and remixed from
Hmm.
all these different people and places and times. And I had, I keep having experiences like this, and it makes my life so much richer to
Yeah.
know that art and culture comes to me through these long wandering paths through time and space.
Hmm.
So that's my primary source of inspiration in music and in life.
Yeah. That's amazing to hear, and it's just really, yeah, just enlightening to hear you connect those pieces and go to that level that you're, connecting those dots and seeing how all of this stuff is interwoven,
Mhm.
because you're absolutely right. And it's just really cool that you share that. And yeah, thank you for passing this stuff along, and
My pleasure.
sharing your, like, just, yeah, inspirational songwriting practice. And yeah, I hope some people can look at that and um take some of these tips that you shared, uh and use them in their life, because a lot of it is just really some basic stuff of, whether it's just hitting a drum, hitting a couple of drums, or just trying to listen to music in a different way. So thank you so much for that, Francis. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It energizes me, so I hope it does the same for you and your listeners.
Every time it hurts like the last time. Every time it feels like the first time. I swear I would have done things differently had I known. Had I known. All I ever took were my chances to make it in the book of great romances. And what now? I would have gambled everything had I known. Had I known. Here it comes again, that old familiar friend, to take the bitter root that grows beneath the grove, tucked away in rainy graves. Had I known, had I known, had I known, I would have gambled everything had I known. Had I known. Where am I supposed to go when the road is closed? I took it to the end, I lost a lot of friends, but I've come too far to ditch the car. I'm gonna kiss the wind goodbye. I'm gonna turn my pistols into night. Finally take my day of rest. I should have done this earlier had I known. Had I known.